I was just looking at this article here from Sign of Zion, early history of millennial teachings. And I just like to kind of read with these funny glasses. Okay, the Millennium Doctrine started in an ungodly heretic by the name of Cerinthus, 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 who lived in the first century. It is true that the Jews generally believed that the Messiah would establish a literal or earthly kingdom. So the Jews generally believed that the Jews believed that this, and even some of them believed that Messiah's reign would last 1,000 years. We here give an extract from Neander's History of Christian Dogmas, Volume 1, page 248. The idea of millennial reign proceeded from Judaism. For among the Jews, the representation was current that the Messiah would reign 1,000 years upon earth. Such products of Jewish imagination passed over into Christianity. So this was a notion of the Jews. As before stated, Cerinthus was the first to attempt to introduce this doctrine under Christianity. Let history speak. In Eusebius's Ecclesiastical History Book 3, chapter 28, is preserved a fragment from the writings of Caius, who lived about the close of the 2nd century, which gives us the following account of Cerinthus' heresy. But Cerinthus, too, through revelations written as he would have us believe, by a great apostle. In other words, listen to this. Cerinthus said that through revelations written as he would have us to believe that a great apostle wrote it. Sounds like John, maybe the book of Revelation, huh? So, but Cerinthus too, through revelations written, has, as he would have us to believe by a great apostle, brings before us marvelous things which he pretends were shown by him by angels. So he saw this by angels, alleging that after the resurrection, the kingdom of Christ is to be on earth, and that the flesh dwelling in Jerusalem is again to be subject to desires and pleasures. And being an enemy to the scriptures of God, wishing to deceive men, he says that there is to be a space of 1,000 years for marriage festivities. One of the doctrines he taught was that Christ would have an earthly kingdom. This is the true origin of the millennium theory. The reader will observe how lightly our author speaks of Cerinthus' idea of the kingdom of Christ being set up on earth after the resurrection. He says this doctrine was, and I quote, something which he, Cerinthus, pretends was shown to him by angels. Caius must therefore have believed the orthodox teaching of the scriptures that Christ's kingdom was set up at his first coming. Observe also that Caius calls Cerinthus an enemy of the scriptures of God, and one who was wishing to deceive men. This language he uses with special reference to the 1,000 years Cerinthus claimed would be spent in sensuality. See, Cerinthus believed that the 1,000-year reign would be something like the Muslims have with the 72 virgins. So notice also that Cerinthus believed in the earthly kingdom. Cerinthus lived in the days of the Apostle John, the supposed writer of Revelations. We will now call your attention to the attitude of the beloved apostle towards the millennial teacher. In other words, what did John think of Cerinthus? Irenaeus, who was born about 120 AD and was acquainted with Polycarp, the disciple of John. Eusebius, Ecclesiastical History, verse 24, states that while John was at Ephesus, he entered a bath to wash and found that Cerinthus was within it, and refused to bathe in the same bathhouse as Cerinthus, but left the building and exhorted those with him to do the same, saying, "Let us flee, lest the bath fall in, as long as Cerinthus, that enemy of the truth, is within." Eusebius, Ecclesiastical History 3:28. So let this be a rebuke to the modern millennial advocates. They claim their doctrine is well founded in the Apocalypse of John, but John himself called the founder of their theory that enemy of the truth. Cerinthus required his followers to worship the supreme God. He promised them a resurrection of their bodies, which would be succeeded by an exquisite delights in the millenarian reign of Christ. For Cerinthus supposed that Christ would hereafter return and would reign with his followers 1,000 years in Palestine. Mosheim's Ecclesiastical History, page 50. Cerinthus required his followers to retain part of the Mosaic law. He was a Judaizer. But to regulate their lives by examples of Christ, and taught that after the resurrection Christ would reign upon the earth with his faithful disciples 1,000 years, which would be spent in the highest sensual indulgences. This mixture of Judaism and Oriental philosophy was calculated to make many converts. Just like Islam, huh? And this sect soon, the 72 version, this sect soon became very numerous. There were a lot of people in a sect. They admitted a part of St. Matthew's Gospel, but rejected the rest, and held the Epistle of Paul's in great abhorrence. They hated Paul. Gregory and Reuter's Church History, page 30. These are the references. Even though the floods of the nations and the vain superstitions of heretics should revolt against their true faith, they are overcome and shall be dissolved as the foam, because Christ is the rock by which and on which the church is founded, and thus it is overcome by no traces of maddened men. Therefore they are not to be heard who assure themselves that there is to be an earthly reign of 1,000 years, who think, that is to say, with the heretic Cerinthus, for the kingdom of Christ is now eternal in his saints. From a commentary on the Apocalypse by Victorinus, probably not Victorinus Gaius Marius, but the other one, Ante-Nicene Fathers. Now, a lot of this stuff, these church fathers went back and forth, but you can see that there was a sect of Christianity that was actually it was refuted in the Nicene at the Nicene Council by Eusebius himself. Thank God for the united testimony of history. Observe, dear reader, how closely the modern millennial teachers cling to the doctrines of their founder, Cerinthus, taught that Christ will have an earthly kingdom. After the resurrection, the kingdom of Christ is to be on earth. The resurrection would be followed by exquisite delights in the millenary reign of Christ. That Christ would hereafter return and would reign with his followers 1,000 years in Palestine. The only difference is that his modern followers have dropped the idea of sensuality. But how did the earthly church regard the doctrine of Cerinthus? The Apostle John called Cerinthus that enemy of the truth. They taught that they are not to be heard who assure themselves that there is to be earthly reign of 1,000 years. This is John the Apostle. What was the doctrine of the early church according to history? Christ is to be the rock on which and by which the church is founded. The kingdom of Christ is now eternal in his saints. It was the universal feeling among primitive Christians that there were living in the last period and the world's history. Encyclopedia Britannica. I can go on and on. Basically, if you look at who Cerinthus is, then you get a basic idea that this whole idea of a millennial reign came from these Judaizing roots, and it was considered a heresy back in the early church. Thank you.